Welcome back, everyone. I'm Ariana Rose, a Royal Management Days reporter, and I'd like to introduce you to the formidable Dr. Sandie Okoro. She is Senior Vice President and General Counsel for the World Bank Group and Vice President for Compliance at the World Bank. She is the first Brit, as well as the first Black woman to hold this role. She has received countless accolades and lifetime achievement awards for her efforts in diversity, women's empowerment, and leadership. Today, we'll be talking about her journey and leading with optimism. And I'd like to remind you there'll be time at the end of the session to answer any questions, so send them in as and when they come. Firstly, Sandie, thank you for talking to us today. What an inspiration you are.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here.
So one of the themes today is optimism, and it's something many of us are currently struggling with in our third lockdown here in Britain. You manage hundreds of people around the world, so you have a lot of remote motivation practice. What's your advice for leaders on motivating their teams remotely?
Well, first of all, it is very difficult. Let's not pretend that anything to do with the remote environment we're in is easy. But one of the things that I would say is that it's even more important as a leader to connect with your team and to be optimistic. And I always say that optimism and pessimism are free. They both cost the same. So why not hoard optimism? And whatever you call it, could be hope, it could be anything like that. I think it's really important. People are suffering from mental health challenges. For some people, being in lockdown is a terrible situation. There may even be some people who are suffering domestic violence as a result. You just don't know. But I think to be upbeat, to paint a vision of the future and what that looks like, rather than kind of the current situation, is really important. And also recognizing, even in that optimism, that we may all be in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. So it's not affecting everybody differently. If you've got to homeschool children and you're doing your job online, that's very different to if you're not in that situation at all, and you live on your own and that's driving you crazy. So I think all of us would prefer things to be otherwise. But optimism to me is also about vision. It paints a future, and it paints the best vision of the future. And we all can aspire to that. It's aspirational. There's nothing wrong with that. Realistic, be realistic about things. And so what we've done with my team as well, which is all over the globe, as you said, Ariana, is that we have done some quizzes where we have brought people together. Everybody loves a good quiz. And put people in little rooms to do those quizzes, and you get to see people you haven't seen before, that you wouldn't normally see, and you have a bit of fun and you have a bit of banter. We shared videos of ourselves doing different things. I do a weekly hello to everybody. It's a bit of fun, and we have so many languages in our team that in that weekly hello we've been giving the message, stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, etc., wear your mask, in different languages. And we've been remotely working now. We're running out of languages, believe it or not. So we've probably done every language you can think of in this time. But you keep the connection, you keep it's going to be okay, we're going to get back together, and feeling like a family and you're all in it together is really, really important, I think, particularly now.
I love that saying of being in the same storm but in a different boat. And you mentioned briefly like people's personal dark experiences, with their mental health. So what about kind of optimism then in times of darkness, especially, there are companies that have rolled out mass redundancies, for example. How can these companies in dark and turbulent times roll out an environment, a culture that is optimistic?
Well, you have to recognize that, first of all, you have to understand that mental health is important. And I think optimism and mental health and pessimism are all part of that same playing field, actually. So one of the important things to do is to look after the mental health welfare of your staff. And however you do that, there are many different ways of doing it, but don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Don't assume that is for the individual staff member to sort out. It's the responsibility of the manager. It's the responsibility of the company that you work for, because that's as important as your own sort of physical health as well. But it can manifest itself very differently. And one of the things I've said to my managers is look out for some changes in behavior in people as well, and try and make a personal connection. Call your staff on a regular basis. So make more of that personal connection, because I think we're all a little bit fed up of seeing each other on the screen. Oh, not another meeting, please. So but that's the only way that we can do it at the moment. But actually, ringing up, how are you? How are you doing? How are you coping? How's the family? Not work. Is what we need to do. Someone in my team, we've been doing this quite a lot, was really tough when one of her team members, the other way, said, no, you tell me how you're doing. How is it for you? And she unloaded. So it works both ways, I think. But you can't just wish it. No. You need to be proactive. We need to be proactive as managers. We need to be proactive as institutions. And we need to realize all we've got are our staff. All we've got, whatever we produce, we can't do that without people. And I don't think that's ever going to change. Artificial intelligence and the rest of it, there's always people behind it. And we're all so complicated, and we're all so wonderful, and we all react in different ways. And the other thing you've got to remember is there's a lot going on in the world apart from COVID. There's, George Floyd's murder, Black Lives Matter. There've been a lot here in the US, for example, of attacks against people of Asian origin. And so people are scared of a number of different things. Even to go outside their house, they're scared as well. So we live in an unusual time. And so I really think it's incumbent to paint a future that looks bright, but it could be different from what we know now. So one of the things I'm saying to everybody is, look, as soon as we are in a better place with COVID and everything, it's going to be the roaring 20s. And we're all going to go fling the doors open, and we're all going to have such fun. And what are you going to do? What's your roaring 20s going to look like? So I say this to everyone, what's your roaring 20s going to look like? What are all the things you want to do that you've never done before or were waiting to do? Because it will be different now. And what are all the things you didn't see yourself doing, you're starting to do? I think we all are. But that optimism of it's going to be okay is really important.
Love that. How are you, and how will you spend the roaring 20s?
Yes.
So what about you personally then, speaking of, looking forwards, being optimistic, what has kept you optimistic since the onset of the pandemic?
Well, first of all, I think one of the things that kept me optimistic, when it first started, we just didn't know how long we were going to be here. And it's a year now. And I remember at the time, we thought it would be a few weeks.
Yeah.
So everybody said, oh, it's a bit different, this will be fine. But as we saw this was going to be for a long time, you had to get into a state of mind and readjust. And that's one of the hardest things to do. And I think it's something like 21 days to change your routine before it becomes your routine. So I thought to myself, right, I'm going to do something that I think I can't do, but I'm going to do it because I have the time to do it. So I took up learning Spanish. Wow. I've been rubbish at languages the whole of my life, right? And barely got my French GCSE, that kind of thing, where they make you do languages in England. Yeah. Rubbish at it, je m'appelle, and it's it's just awful. But I thought, no, I'm going to learn a language in lockdown. So when people say, what did you do in lockdown? Hablo español. So I'm learning it, and because my mindset is different, and my mindset is, and I have a goal that when I come out of this pandemic, I will be fluent in Spanish. That mindset, and I've had something else to concentrate, and I put on the Spanish subtitles in everything I watch in Netflix. I have this the subtitles there, so I'm doing my own version of immersion, and watching a few good soap operas in Spanish. It's taken my mind off it because it's given me another goal. Not everybody can do that, but you could learn to cook. I started going on walks. I hated walking. Now I walk nearly 4 miles a day. So those things I thought I hate, I'm no good at. Well, I didn't see COVID coming, so Spanish isn't going to see me coming either. So that's what I did. And so I can say, what did you do during the pandemic? I learned Spanish. But everyone, I think, learns something, do something new. So out of that, you can say, out of this misery, because it is miserable, people have lost loved ones. We haven't been able to be with loved ones. Schools have been disrupted, but something positive must come out of it.
God, that's so impressive. Making me feel really lazy. I'm not learning Spanish.
I didn't mean to do that. I didn't
no, but it's really impressive. It's empowering. let's talk more about you. You are the first Black woman to hold your current role and Brit. What does that feel like?
Oh, what a great question. Feels like the norm because I've often been the first Black woman in a particular role, particularly in financial services. But I also feel very proud. I feel very proud. And the bank is very conscious of different nationalities. It's made up of 187 member countries. And so nationality is important. So I was very proud to be the first Black Brit in that role as well, you know, representing Britain and everything it can do, particularly in the GC role, which is a very important role in the bank. So I felt, I felt, oh, I've made it. I thought, oh, I think I've made it. And then you sit there and you think, yeah, but it won't last long, will it? You know, they'll suss me out, you know, that imposter syndrome, and then it will all go horribly wrong. Of course it hasn't, but you never make it and sit there thinking, and I know I can do this with my eyes closed. You never feel that imposter syndrome is always there. You know, when I first got it, I thought, oh, they got the wrong Sandie Okoro, haven't they? It's the other one that they wanted. But I love it. It's very challenging day to day. I realize the importance of the role that I have. And Kristalina Gergoyeva, who's now, I used to work with her at the bank, she's now head of the IMF, said, what's the point of having a big job title if you don't do something important? And so I've used my position and that uniqueness of it to talk a lot about gender issues and to talk a lot about gender-based violence and access to justice, particularly with women. Because when I've been on my trips for work, I meet the most remarkable women in the remotest places who are very disenfranchised in many ways. And they say to me, you can be our voice. You know, you look like us, you can be our voice. You know, don't waste this. And so I've taken this opportunity to talk about the things that affect all women, all the things that the bank is doing around this, but to be that voice, because women are often disempowered when it comes to voice and agency. And if I have that, because it comes with the territory, I'm going to use that to try and raise some of these issues and make the world a better place for women across the globe.
Wow,
so that's great.
That's great, especially in a week like obviously the past week. So important to use your voice. And as you said, you're often first, you know, woman and Black women in the rooms. You know, there are still many firms like City Group Bank that have only just hired their first female CEO. You know, women have been in banking for decades.
I know.
You know what I mean? Why is it taking so long to pull women through the ranks?
One simple answer: discrimination. Okay, we can't hide from that. We try and say, oh, you know, maybe it's lack of mentoring, maybe it's lack of flexible working. No, it's discrimination to start with. Okay, and that's where it comes, that the feeling that women are somehow lesser than or are not as able as, you know, that other, and somehow we're giving permission to do this. But we have got past that in some ways. We recognize that discrimination is there, but it is still there. And I mean, if you look at issues around sexual harassment, you look around issues of, you know, promotion practices and experience that you need. When it comes to women coming in those very important positions, people get very serious all of a sudden about the criteria and the skill set, where decades ago they weren't so much. You know, but as soon as, you know, women or minorities or wherever it is, you know, what you're not used to, this idea of somehow capability comes into it, which is a bit condescending, if you ask me, because we're all capable. Don't mix up experience with capability, right? And how do you become experienced if somebody doesn't give you your first experience at something? So one of the things I always say, and I say this to both men and women actually, is try and have some experience in the boardroom, but outside of your job, right? So you can really understand what it's like. So, you know, become a school governor, sit on the board of a local charity, do something outside where you see how you run something, and the challenges people have. You can get that experience. And I would really, really like to see, you know, organizations really put their money where their mouth is and encourage women in particular to take up positions outside and give them time to do that. Because first of all, these charities and schools need that. they need people, and so it's part of your charitable giving, it's part of your community engagement, but also they're going to get skill sets that they'll bring back to the workplace. So you can't expect to say, oh, well, we don't have the pipeline. Well, what are you doing to create the pipeline? And I think that's what's really important. So I think the discrimination has created the position we're in today. And we know that. So let's not pretend it's anything else. It's not lack of skills. It's not anything else. Let's not confuse that with people's capability of doing what it's opportunity, it is experience. So let's go out and give it to them. And let's take some chances. All right, let's take some chances. When you look at some of the best CEOs in the world who created the most ambitious companies, most of them didn't go and do MBAs at Harvard. They just created their companies. Let's get a little bit more experimental. We're going into the roaring 20s. Let's tear up the rule book and do it differently.
100%. And what's your advice for women, that are in these male-dominated spaces?
Well, what I would say, first one is, don't think of it as male-dominated. Think of it as female underrepresented. Twist it a bit, because dominated has such a strong word. It's almost, you can't go. How do you face domination? And also, make sure the men in those institutions are your allies. They're not your enemies. There, many of the men in senior positions I know want more diversity in all senses. They realize what it brings, and there's a bottom line improvement, no doubt about it. We don't even have to prove that anymore. So they know it's good for business too. But let's make sure we don't close down any conversations, we open them up. But I would say, do not own the space. Don't be afraid of it. Do not ask for permission. Do not wait for someone to give you something or think you are worthy of something. Because of the way that women are portrayed in society generally, in gender across the globe, when you imagine certain roles, a woman doesn't necessarily automatically come to mind. That's an unconscious bias there. We need to change that, right? By bringing that idea of a woman doing that particular role to mind. So don't ask for permission. If you're capable, give it a go. If you think you're only half capable, give it a go. Even if you just want to do it, give it a go. I was saying in an interview earlier, I can is much more important than IQ. And if they say, what do they say? If you want something done, give it to a busy woman. It's amazing how if you're going with your passion and what you love, don't do something you don't love, you'll be able to do it. The male domination probably does not exist as much as you think. You might be pushing there against an open door. Don't fall for the stereotype is what I would say, and go for it.
This girl can.
Yeah.
Something which is really interesting about you is that you pivoted. So how did you pivot in your career from such a specialist role in law into leadership? And obviously, how can others do the same?
Well, so there is this, are leaders born or are they made? And I think they're found, right? So for me, I found that I had a voice and I could have used that to speak about very technical matters in the field I was in. But I decided very early on, much like the women who said, you've got a voice and we haven't, to talk about the things that really mattered to me and mattered to other women too. And when you do that, that in of itself is leadership. Don't think of leadership as just being the big title, having the big job and being able to boss a lot of people around. It is actually having a cause and sticking to it and leading a debate on something and sticking and really having a vision about the future. That to me is the core of leadership. And of course, you're bringing people along with you and you're encouraging people to behave better, etc. But that kind of comes from within. And it really doesn't matter. And I've seen this, all the jobs that I've been doing, that you see leadership qualities in people no matter what job they're doing, because they do something more than their job description. You see that they take their job very seriously and will do it fantastically well. That's a given. But they're also doing more than that. They're somehow doing, the cherry on top, or they're involved in this over here, or they just take the initiative. And that's what leadership is you take the initiative when you see. You don't wait for someone else to do it and then think, that's a good idea, I'll do that. You are the one that's taking the initiative. So the leadership comes from within. So I wouldn't say it was so much of a pivot. I think I was just found and then found myself in this role. And then when you find yourself there, don't forget to lead. That's one thing, is don't forget why you're there and what it is you can change while you're there, which can be way more than just your job. But you're never your job title. Don't forget that. Don't get the big head. But what are you going to use your voice for? What are you going to change? Because that job title means nothing if you don't try and make other people's lives better. You're just a waste of space.
That's so powerful. I mean, I could keep talking to you all afternoon, but unfortunately I have to share your wisdom with the call. So I'm going to ask you some questions from some of our viewers. One that's come through is, how do you motivate your team during an incredibly busy time at work when everyone's at max capacity already?
Oh gosh, that is really, really difficult. One of the things I would say, and that's a great question, it's really important as a leader, and it was hard for me to be visible, because you become less visible in a remote environment. You're not around the office, people don't see you. So to make sure that you are visible. So one of the things I did before Christmas, and I'm going to start again, is going into their team meeting so they can just see me and thanking them for the work that they're doing and connecting on an individual basis. And one of the things I've really tried to do is ask my team of managers to let me know how people are doing, and if anyone is struggling or suffering, and then I send them a personal note or I send them some flowers. Unfortunately, a few people have lost people due to COVID during this time in their families. So I made sure I connected with them and that they were okay. Because I think that sense of belonging is very important. That sense that you are connected is the most, and that you care, right? Mental health as well. We're doing quite a lot of mental health seminars. I've got someone on my team who's a wellness guru and expert, and the psychology aspect of that as well. So we've been doing some seminars with people on burnout, on those to understand and to recognize, right? This is what it is. Get sleep. Really basic things. Get your 7 hours of Zeds, eat properly, go for a walk, take a break, walk away from the screen. I learned myself, not that I'm doing it yet, but I've learned myself, do not be in front of a screen, TV or anything an hour before you go to sleep. It's called the blue screen thing. You will sleep much better. So these are all important for mental health, so we're making sure we connect, we make sure we talk about these things, and that we get together, and that we have some fun as well, as much as you can in a remote environment. So that is how you do it. It's not overcomplicated. Do the simple things well, but do them first.
Something like a post-it note, really, it costs nothing.
But... Exactly.
Someone else has asked, how do you react to discrimination when you experience it? Do you call it out?
Look, I call it out a lot more than I did when I was younger. I was too afraid to call it out when I was younger. I was too afraid. Well, first of all, when I was younger, lots of you weren't alive, but when I was younger, lots of things we see as discrimination then were not seen as discrimination now. So I'll tell you a story. When I was a little girl at school, and the teacher went around the room and asked everybody what they wanted to do when they grew up, and I said I wanted to be a judge, she told me, Sandie, little black girls from Balham don't become judges, in front of the whole class, which of course is just outrageous now, but it wasn't outrageous then. So the environment I grew up in, there wasn't a lot of expectation if you were black, and there wasn't a lot of expectation if you were female. I went to a wonderful school, secondary school after that changed that view of me. And it's like, you could do what you want to do, just do it and don't complain. Just get out there and do it. And so I thought I could do anything. And post that, I didn't let other people's low opinion of me become my opinion of me. And I thought, if I'm going to be the first and everything, I don't care, I'm going to do it, and I will do it. And I also thought, and this is what I mean about being in the future, that it won't always be like this. I was absolutely sure it won't always be like this. I was even told at some point in my name, change my career, change your surname, Okoro, it's too ethnic sounding. You'll never get anywhere in the city with a job like that. What rubbish. But I thought, no, the world is not going to always be like that. And it isn't. We've still got lots of things to do and lots of fights to fight, but it is a very different place. So I wouldn't say I called it out when I was younger, because, you know, you don't want to commit harry-carry, do you? You're just like, you know, I wouldn't be doing myself. But once I had a position of power myself, I started to call it out, and I started to get involved in these things, and I call it out now. And I actually had the task force at the bank on racism, and we are if you do it in a respectful manner, don't try and be adversarial about it. That really doesn't help get your point across, but you can get your point across very firmly. So I do that now, and I feel I'm doing it on behalf of others, because there's someone just like me in junior ranks who can't do that. And I think it's really important for others to be allies and to call it out. And the easiest ally, and allies, you know, intersectionality. So, if you are, a white female and you see some discrimination, you can call that, you can call that out. We're all allies in one way or another. And so did I when I was young? Absolutely not. I was too scared. But do I? Yeah, I absolutely have to, because there's still those that are there that need that. And if you don't, then again, what's the point of having these senior positions?
Wow, your story brought me back to when I was younger, actually, and I was told, I was from a working class background, and my teacher said, when I said I want to be a journalist, she was like, you know, that's really hard. Like, you should probably have a plan B. And it's just like, these are people at the top, like they should be helping you pursue your dreams, you know? You're so right.
Exactly. But you imagine, Ariana, how many people then thought that must be true because you're in a position of power, so I'm going to go and do something else. So how many journalists have we lost as a result of that, who believe that? Because it takes a lot to go, no. A lot.
So much power. They create reality, right?
Yeah.
Finally, before we go, let's talk a bit economic empowerment, which I know is a word you've used before. So from a managerial aspect, what's your advice on ensuring all contributions in the workplace are valued and pay gaps are closed?
Well, first of all, you really need to take an effort to close that pay gap, right? And you need to recognize it. It does cost you money if you want to, but you can't say we believe in equal pay and then not pay people equally. But also what's very important there is to look at your methodology in promotions, in performance ratings, etc., to make sure that methodology matches with not wanting a pay gap, and particularly when people come into the institution. Because I would say this to everybody, if you're moving jobs, people often say, well, what was your previous salary? You say, well, what relevance is that? What is it you pay someone in? Because that is another thing that allows women to lag behind. And I've seen these figures, is they ask for less coming in because they are on less. So and then institutions go, that's fine, because that is a 15% jump, 20% jump. They don't think, no, that's not good, because when you come in, you'll be at the bottom end of the men here. So really look at it, do a really hard search there. And we have really odd sorts of ways of looking at various things. And we forget that you are paid to do a job. So what is the pay for that job? And yes, there can be some difference because of experience, right? But there shouldn't be that much of a difference, right?
Yeah.
That it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much gap between me and X, and we're doing the same job or a comparable job. And we tend to sometimes confuse experience with that and say, yeah, but they've had so many more years experience. But is it the same job? Is it the same job? And so I think it's just, none of this is rocket science. It's actually, you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket and your hand on your heart. And if you don't want to put your hand on your pocket, then put your hand on your heart and say, we just don't want to do it. It will cost us too much money. But don't try and pretend you're doing both. Actually, say you want to address the issue, and you're going to address the issue and really address it and get everybody where they should be. Or say, you know what? We say it, but we can't do it for XX reason. But people pretend all the time that they want to do it and then they don't do it. I'm not for, oh, let's be transparent about everybody's salaries, because I think that isn't what we want either. But we should be able to say that, yes, you know, if we were transparent the next day, you would see that there isn't that much of a gender gap.
So stop asking salary history, because it's perpetuating inequality.
Exactly, it perpetuates the inequality.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for, sadly, Sandie. It's been amazing. Thank you very much, basically.
It's been a pleasure. It's gone so quickly.
I know. Like say.